Cassell drops back. Shaw can't find anyone. Anderson turning and fires for three and hits.
Nelson Nick Anderson, born January 20th, 1968. The 94-95 Orlando Magic season. I was just about to speak on this team as a whole for the amazing trajectory they had at one point to losing it all in what seemed like a blink of an eye. Had things go different that year, Shaquille O'Neal may just have retired a Magic with possibly multiple championships. He left after the next season. But then I stumbled on another story, one more relatable, more important to not just the players but the organization as a whole, affected by 4 straight missed calculations, and one more personal. Yes, I've been there before, like I'm sure many have. Game on the line, missed. The story of Nick Anderson. What intrigued me most about this story was the admitted mental effect it had on the player ever since that saw his chances at the player he could have been expire just as time did at the end of that last finals game for the 95 Orlando Magic being swept by the Houston Rockets. Just one of those missed shots could have won the game, and who knows, maybe even give the team the momentum needed to defeat Houston in a 90s era where winning championships were tough to come by. Nick Anderson stated himself that he's never really been the same since, and it showed in his free throw shooting and production in general in the years after. Anderson was on the verge of becoming a star in Orlando, and the Magic, with the addition of Penny Hardaway in just his second year with Shaquille O'Neal, made it to the NBA Finals after having missed the playoffs altogether in Nick Anderson's first 4 years. He was the best player in his state in high school, parade and McDonald's All-American, star freshman and all-conference sophomore, to being good enough to leave school early and enter the NBA draft, taken 11th overall. Entering the NBA, Nick was thought to be the perfect shooting guard for the new era. 6'6", great footwork, athletic, could play high-level defense, and when he finally got his three-point shot to fall in the league, he was on path to becoming one of the best in that area as well. That very 94-95 season, he shot a career-high 41% from 3. That declined every year after. What happened to Nick Anderson, who should have been one of the greatest shooting guards of the 90s era? Let's talk about it. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth. Let's get it, man. Nick Anderson was a 6'6" shooting guard from Chicago, Illinois that averaged 19 points as a sophomore and 28 by his second varsity year. After transferring to famed Simeon by his senior year, he was being named Mr. Basketball for the state of Illinois and one of the top-rated prospects leaving high school. He chose to stay in-state with Illinois, where he took his team to the second round as a freshman and leading scorer, to the Final Four as a sophomore, averaging 18 points, 8 rebounds before deciding to leave early for the NBA draft. He became the 11th and first ever pick for the expansion Orlando Magic and expected to be their cornerstone to a championship shooting guard going forward. Stunt number 1, the 4 missed attempts. In his first season with the Magic, Nick Anderson looked promising on both ends. He played in all but one game and was very productive in his 22 minutes a game, averaging 11.5 points, shooting almost 50% from the field and 70% from the foul line. Below average for an NBA shooting guard? Yeah, I know. Many speak about the isolated missed free throws in Game 1 of the 95 finals, but if you look a little deeper, Nick Anderson had always struggled from the foul line going back to his college days, shooting just 65% for his career. Of course, as a seasoned player in the league by his only NBA finals in 95, you would expect him to have lived those demons down, but such wasn't the case. Fact is, those were special free throws, because it was those that turned Nick Anderson into a mental wreck for the rest of his career, and just may have been the reason the early 90s Orlando Magic lost an opportunity to really make magic and history. By just Nick Anderson's third year, he was a borderline all-star. He had become more confident shooting the NBA three, and his points ballooned to almost 20 points a game, along with 6 rebounds and nearly 2 steals. He shot a career high from the free throw line the next season, 92-93. Of course, Penny Hardaway arrived in Orlando 93-94, and along with Shaquille O'Neal, took over as the faces of the team. But Nick was still a very important third option by 94-95. He shot 70% for just the third time in 6 years, and what would be his last. The Magic won 57 games that season and were first in their division, and also defeated Michael Jordan and the Bulls in the famed Last Dance-worthy semifinals of the Eastern Conference. Nick Anderson was the guy that stole the ball from MJ, and later said MJ wasn't the same in number 45 as 23. The Magic made it all the way to the NBA Finals, and Nick was playing solid throughout. 14 points a game, shooting 38% from 3 and 70% going into Game 1 against the Rockets and home court advantage. The Magic were leading 110-107 when Robert Horry fouled Anderson with 8.5 seconds to go. 1 makes it really difficult. 2 seals the deal for Orlando. He missed both and got his own rebound, only to step up and miss another pair. Kenny Smith would come down and hit a clutch three-pointer to tie the game and send it to overtime. Orlando never recovered and were swept in the series. Brian Hill, the coach that year, later stated that the guys were broken after that game and never got back to who they were. Nick Anderson described himself as a dog with no bite to his bark for the rest of his career. Stunt number 2, the rest of his career. Confidence. It's the one thing a successful basketball player has to find a way to develop at some point over the course of his career. Nick Anderson feeling that way about himself is something we found out in hindsight, but to know those free throws had that big of an impact on him personally is eye-opening to how serious the mental aspects of the game can get for some. For one like Nick Anderson, it was literally the defining moment of his career, and probably the clearest defining moment I've seen from a professional athlete. Nick became a free agent after the season, and in negotiation, the Orlando Magic incentivized his contract, requiring him to attempt at least 3 free throws a game to receive said contract in full. That pressure mentally made him shy away from the foul line and saw a steep decline in his percentages in the years to come. He'd often call on other guys to shoot technicals and not seem to want the ball in late game situations. He'd play 4 more seasons with the Magic, never making it past the first round since Shaq left after the 95-96 season. Orlando would lose in the first round, miss the playoffs, and lose in the first round again in Nick Anderson's final season with the team before he was traded to Sacramento for the 99-2000 season. He shot as low as 40% from the line in 96-97 and was a frame of what he could have been since the missed free throws. Stunt number 3. There really was no third growth stunt for Nick Anderson. He was a good player that had great potential as an amateur, worked on his skills to the point he was considered an elite prospect leaving college, and selected high in the draft with great expectations. But like mentioned, you have to be mentally prepared to handle the stages Nick Anderson saw playing with 2 great players. Before he and the Magic were expected to do great things, he played almost all-star level. When the expectation grew, Nick Anderson shrank and is not afraid to admit that confidence-wise he just didn't have it. He was still a very solid player that could have been used on a contending team as a 3rd or 4th option. But then again, mentally, with what he was going through, how do you trust him in that situation? Reminds me of Mitch Richmond as the career that could have been for Anderson, even with the missed free throws. Mentally, it was just never meant to be. Salute to Nick, much respect, but for these reasons, his growth was stunted. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth, and I'm out.